Hey guys, welcome to a new video, and in today's video we are going to be looking at, today I'm doing a live video because I feel like it's been a while since I did a live video. Like my last live video was all the way back when the presidential candidates of 2016 were doing the convention. So I decided I was just going to do another live video just for special circumstances. Nothing in particular, just for reasons. Anyway, let's catch up on some news. I'll just recent news. I don't think it's going to affect much, but as most of you probably know, there was indictment of 12 Russians and the meddling of the U.S. election. Don't think it's going to affect anything short term, at least, such as midterms, governor races. Of course, not governor races, even the presidential election. I don't think it's anything that's going to affect the president or his approval. So I don't think it's really much to talk about. Mitt Romney's running for Senate. There's another big one. I think he's got a pretty good chance of winning. He's a popular politician around the United States. I think he'll win. I think it'll be easy. Yeah, that's pretty much the biggest news lately. Anyway, let's get to what we're going to be doing in this video. The title of this video is Elections of U.S. History. So today I'm mainly going to be looking at elections in modern history. And when I say modern history, let me share my screen here. When I say modern history, I mean mainly elections that are after the District of Columbia was added to the Electoral College map. So here's the map in 1964. It was Lyndon B. Johnson versus Barry Goldwater. And Barry Goldwater is arguably that Republican candidate who transformed the South into a conservative base. That's arguable. But many historians, many political scientists say that it was around the year 1964 where the South started to trend red. So this is how the formatting is going to go. I'm going to read the description on the presidential election, and I'm going to discuss just like how the states voted, why they voted the way they did, to the best of my ability, and maybe even explore how some other candidates would have done, better or worse. Yeah, Ben. I'm just, quoting historians and stuff. Nothing too big. Oh boy, I forgot to read the description. Okay, so the presidential election of 1964. The United States presidential election of 1964 was the sixth most lopsided presidential election in the history of the United States. Behind the elections of 1964, or behind the elections of 1936, 1984, 1972, 1864, and 1980 in terms of electoral votes. In terms of popular vote, it was the fifth most. President Lyndon B. Johnson had come into office less than a year earlier following the assassination of his predecessor, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and Johnson had a successful associate himself with Kennedy's popularity. Johnson had successfully associated himself with Kennedy's popularity. Johnson also successfully painted his opponent, Republican Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona, as a right-wing legislator who wanted to abolish social welfare programs created in the 1930s, such as Social Security. LBJ advocated for more such programs, and in 1965 instituted three: Medicare, Medicaid, and War on Poverty. With these factors working for him, Johnson easily won the presidency, carrying 44 out of the 50 states in the District of Columbia. As of 2009, Johnson's 22.6% point margin of victory in the popular vote was the fifth largest such margin in the presidential election history after the margins of 1920, 1924, 1936, and 1972. Johnson won 61.1% of the national popular vote, which remains the highest popular vote percentage won by any U.S. presidential candidate since 1820. The election also the election is also remembered due to Goldwater's status as a pioneer in the modern conservative movement. Now we're going to click on the interactive map and just kind of dissect things here a little bit. And in the next things, if it's kind of obvious, like this one, who won and how big they won, I won't do too much discussing on it. So here it was, 486 electoral votes to 52 electoral votes. Now let's discuss this for just a second and say that I don't think we will ever see a candidate get more than 44 states again, mainly because the United States has become so polarized to a particular party or another, where the idea of seeing a Wyoming flip to the Democrats is just not something you would think about, and the idea of seeing a DC or a California switch to the Republicans is just not something you would think about on a regular presidential election basis. So these historical presidential elections were a lot more filled with moderates. And so I think that is the reason why a lot of states went for either candidate by massive margins. Well, not by massive margins, but in massive groups. Like states went, I mean, honestly, Wyoming went for Lyndon B. Johnson. And just to think that he ran as presidential candidate or candidacy based on Goldwater taking away social welfare programs in Wyoming, of all states, nowadays, thinking about it, Wyoming of all states supported that. Pretty crazy, right? Let's suppose that John F. Kennedy was the one that was running. Obviously, I don't think that John F. Kennedy would win as many states as Johnson did, mainly because, well, there's not really evidence to back up. He might have won more states, don't get me wrong, but there's not really much evidence that backs up what John F. Kennedy would have done if he had been able to finish his term in the presidency. Therefore, he really can't be added to one of those best presidents ever type of thing, because you know, he really didn't have the chance to prove that. He also didn't have a chance to prove himself a bad president. He did some very good things in his presidency. But you can arguably say that he did some very stupid stuff too. For example, well, I don't know much, but I really don't know what stupid stuff he's done. There's stupid stuff he's done, trust me. Every president has done stupid stuff, but you know, I guess I don't have the motivation to list those right now. Anyway, you know, Johnson won a massive landslide here, and that's undeniable. And there's not really much else you can say about this. It was a landslide, and that's about all you can really say about a presidential election like this, is that it was a landslide victory. You know, the next election, let's go here. We're on the 1964 right now. Got it. Oh, come on. Boy, I suppose I clicked through all of these before I got on here to figure out where to start. Oh, here we go. 1964 was where we're at. Okay, 1984 or 1968. Yeah, this one looks interesting. Obviously the Republican candidate won, Richard Nixon. You know, it was following the assassin. Well, conducted against the backdrop that included the assassination of civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr., riots across the nation, the assassination of presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy, widespread demonstrations against the war in Vietnam. Well, let's just say hippie days, okay? We'll just say hippie days and get it over with. So hippie days, in the hippie days, obviously everybody was against the war in Vietnam. If you've ever seen the movie Forrest Gump, it gives a very good portrayal of how days like this were. Pretty crazy, because most of those hippies were on all sorts of different drugs and stuff. It's pretty crazy, but there's also pretty good documentaries out there on it as well, so go watch those too. So looking at the popular vote and stuff here, Richard Nixon won about 1 million more votes than Hubert Humphrey, which is pretty crazy considering the amount of states that Richard Nixon won versus how many states Humphrey won. Richard Nixon won 301, Humphrey won 191, and George Wallace, who came in third here, 9 million votes, won 46. I think this is the most states since then that, or since a while before that, that an independent has. I know we haven't had an independent win this many states, at least. I think since then. I don't know. I'd have to look. But yeah. And looking at some of the states that went red in this election, California went red. Illinois went red. Oregon went red. You know, some of these typical blue states that we see nowadays went red back then, and that kind of makes you think for it kind of makes you think about how political stuff has evolved since then. There we go. We're going to invite a guest here. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna invite a guest here so we can get just a little more historical input on this, since I know basically nothing past the 2008 presidential election in terms of how everything historically was put together.
Hello.
Hi. I was just telling them how I know absolutely nothing since 2008 on the historical background of presidential elections and stuff. So, hey, why not have a guest here, you know?
Oh, yeah, no, seriously. Agreed.
So, right now we're on 1968, Richard Nixon.
Yes, and I actually have a map of this pulled up. It goes by county, which is the way I'm looking at it. Where's the call window? There we go. Okay, cool. And unfortunately, it's in a YouTube, but let me. God damn it. 68.
Anything you'd like to say about the 1968 election?
My home state went for the most racist candidate ever.
Oh yeah. I mean, that is. I don't want to like offend the South, but that is a pretty good mirror of the South there. At the time, of course, at the time, it's a lot less.
It's not the right one. No, it's too small. This one is better view image. There we go. George Wallace representing the shrinking but potent Dixiecrat vote.
Yeah, and I see there my county went for Richard Nixon.
Better than George Wallace. Remember, George Wallace is the guy who said segregation now is segregation tomorrow and segregation forever.
Oh.
Yeah.
This map kind of really starts.
And then he got shot.
That's a good thing. He deserves that.
Well, he
lived,
get shot, but he was paralyzed from the waist down. I think actually he got into African American evangelical churches then, which was really weird.
I think that this map is really starting to, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is really starting to show what is now like, I guess, the modern day county map. It's just starting to get towards that, I guess. But yeah, it does reflect. Wait, did Nixon win Cook County in Illinois?
No, he did not. That went to Hubert Humphrey.
I wonder how he won Illinois. Because he won.
Because Chicago wasn't as populous.
True. You could easily outvoted Chicago. You can't do that now, which is going to reflect in the governor races, by the way. I'm just gonna click on to the next election, 1972.
72
was Nixon versus McGovern, D.C. and Massachusetts. Did he even win his home state? I don't think he did. Okay, here's a margin of victory map. So he made some of these Rust Belt states really close. Wisconsin, Minnesota, and South Dakota were pretty close, according to this map. In the range of like 5% there in those states. Same as Rhode Island. But Massachusetts was really close too, like 10% was the margin there. DC, of course, was 15% or more. California was 10%, Oregon was 10%, and the rest of the states were just greater than 15% for Nixon.
Yeah, this was all big. I'm trying to find one that's actually a reasonable size. Let's go. That's not a big. That way we can actually see it. Well, this is as close as we're going to get, but yeah, no. As we can see, Nixon kind of won everything, showing how unpopular George McGovern was. And part of the reason why McGovern did very poorly in this election is he was portrayed as way too liberal.
Yeah, and I found it kind of weird that this was 520 electoral votes to 17 electoral votes, where McGovern won 2 states and still won 28 million votes. I mean, even looking at the margin of victory map, it doesn't really reflect that kind of margin.
Oh yeah. No, it's. And as you can see, McGovern really only won, again, Massachusetts and District of Columbia. And Nixon is the last Republican. This is the last time that the election that Minnesota went for a Republican.
Yeah. It was already starting to lean against the Republicans in this election.
But now what's interesting is that now we see that trend reverse where it's starting to get closer and closer and closer.
It is. And that's the same for all the Rust Belt states. And
yeah, exactly.
Now we're slowly starting to see the South trend back to the Democrats. Slowly but surely.
Things move slower in the South.
Yeah, very slow in the South. And I guess modern day trends really aren't in favor of the Democrats now that I think about it. A lot of key areas.
Just moving on to the next one.
a trend for the Republicans. Are we already on the next one?
I think it's time to move on because there's not much you can really say about 72 except Nixon.
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is Jimmy Carter.
Trying to find one that's by county. Nope.
Win the South. No surprise there.
Nope. That's a very small image. Terrific.
What was the popular vote was 39 million for Gerald Ford to 40 million for Jimmy Carter.
Yep.
It was
honestly
election, to be honest with you. It was rather close.
It was extremely close. Flip Pennsylvania and Ford wins.
Yeah, that's very close. I mean,
if you flip Ohio and say,
what were the closest states? Oh wow, a lot of those were very close.
Exactly. And here's my theory on this election. If Ford doesn't pardon Nixon, meaning, he allows Congress to do whatever they do, I think he wins or I won't call it re-election, but at the same time, I can't really call it election.
Yeah.
But essentially, he wins a term of his own. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Carter won his biggest area of victory in the South. Obviously. Georgia, especially. By the way,
it's his home state. Oh, cool. Indeed, he
knew he was going to be saying "Go Carter."
Go Carter. Such a great guy. Wallace was better than Thurmond. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
So I guess we kind of discussed everything that was going to go on in this election. That was close, and just flipping Pennsylvania.
You flip Pennsylvania. You flip Ohio and Wisconsin, New York, and it's over.
Yeah. That was a very close election. I wonder if there was a closer election. Well, yeah, the 2000 election.
Yeah, that was much closer.
We have an independent and a libertarian. Both 1-0, of course.
Well, obviously. So 1980 was weird.
Election. Ronald Reagan, of course.
He kind of owned the election.
Yeah, he did.
I think a lot of
the southern states, a lot of the states after you pass the little line here, I guess, that splits the western part of the United States from the eastern part of the United States. That was very
essentially the Mississippi River.
Essentially, yeah. That line from Minnesota to Louisiana.
But yeah, it's interesting to notice that West Virginia was one of the most Democrat states in the Union at one point.
Yeah. And you see, Georgia didn't even give Carter his biggest margin. DC did.
Yeah.
Florida went heavily for Reagan.
Yeah.
A lot of the West did. Of course, the West was going to.
California, his home state, of course.
It's interesting because in these areas where some of these states only gave Reagan 5 to 10% win, went for him.
Louisiana, Missouri, Illinois, Michigan, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and not to mention Indiana went for him
significantly.
Points. Florida, New Hampshire, which is a surprise because that's got
it's turned into a swing state. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other things about
this independent candidate Anderson won 5 million votes, but no electoral votes.
Yep.
Iran hostage crisis.
There is It's weird because John Anderson, he wasn't really an independent. He was just a very liberal Republican.
Yeah.
Who ran in the primaries but lost because no one could stop Reagan.
If you look at the mock election community that we're both a member of, the current president of that community is a very liberal Republican. I feel like a lot of Republicans these days are starting to trend more towards being liberal Republicans.
Maybe.
And at least
on social issues.
Given there are a lot of Democrats who are starting to turn conservative too. So I mean,
maybe they're flipping again. Who knows?
My generation is the first generation to be more conservative than their parents, and
Yeah, and my generation is full of people who think that everything should be given to them on a silver platter.
Your generation is full of people who eat Tide Pods.
Oh God, you're right. Oh God, you're right. No, why did I have to be born in this generation? Why could I have been born in part of the prog rock generation? Oh wait, because my life would be, because every sentence I said would be 48 minutes and no one would understand it. Seriously, prog rock is the worst at times. Anyway, moving on to 1984, and we see the biggest. Yeah, the biggest. I mean, we should talk about it and mention that I think the point Reagan won this election was not 88, 84. I will not, political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
And he won the election right there.
Like, even Mondale knew about it.
Yeah, he even laughed at that. He was like...
He laughed at it, and you can see a tear in his eye in the... you can see a tear in his eye, when you actually look at the video of the moment. In interviews afterwards, he just said, that was the moment I knew I lost.
Yeah.
And as we can see, the only reasonably close states were Massachusetts and Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And Minnesota, which Mondale only won by 0.3%.
He could have only won D.C. in that election.
I would have, I'm kind of glad he didn't, because we still have the legend of Washington being the only person to sweep all the states and get all the electoral votes from those states.
True.
I mean, by the way...
Yeah, we'll never have a presidential candidate who wins all the states unless we have one candidate, and that'll never happen. So,
or a candidate like, I don't know, maybe Kanye West.
True, but I still think...
That's the exception to the rule.
I still think even a major third party would win. So,
yeah, that's...
There's not much to say about this. Should we just go on to the next one?
Yeah, we should really
Let's just say Reagan bombs that map pretty good.
Oh, another point where I know exactly where the candidate lost the election.
Oh, here we go. George Bush.
George H.W. Bush.
H.W. Bush. Okay. Read my lip.
What the?
No new taxes.
And what does he do? He passes new taxes. But no, Dukakis got blown out. He lost this election.
If Dukakis wouldn't have gotten that tank, like
yeah, I was about to say he would have been more competitive if he
would have won the election.
Oh man.
He made a terrible appearance.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Somebody just mentioned that in the next election, if you give all of Ross Perot's votes to Bush, then Clinton would only win his home state of Arkansas. Sure, but all of Perot's votes didn't come from Bush voters.
Yeah.
He took about evenly from each, so we have a roughly similar map. maybe you could flip a few states. And I think we should actually talk about that because that's the first really interesting election we've had in a while.
It is. It is. First, let's look at the margin map on 1988 real quick and see that it was actually a close election in some states.
Yes, indeed. So I've actually put the.
At least he got 100 electoral votes. We'll give Dukakis that. Okay, the last.
Yeah, we'll give Dukakis credit where credit is due.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go ahead and be generous.
Popular vote margin too, 47 to 41. It's not bad.
Yeah, I'm gonna be generous to HW and say that.
Here's the interesting map that we've been waiting for the past 5 elections now. 1992.
I'm going to be generous.
It's a major blowout for the Democrats since they hadn't held the White House in several presidents before that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
since I'm going to be there. Right? They hadn't held the White House. Is that right? No, Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, since Jimmy Carter. I'm going to be generous and say that that Bush would probably win in addition to what he actually did if Ross Perot didn't take away votes or anything from either of them. That Montana, Nevada, Colorado, Vermont, Connecticut, and Maine would flip.
But it's also worth pointing out that maybe he racked up the margins in like Texas if Perot weren't in the race, or Florida if Perot weren't in the race.
Oh yeah, it's definitely very split, but
yeah,
I don't know. We notice in Tennessee, Appalachia's been voting Republican since 1900, essentially.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't really give too much credit to the whole Republicans went after the racist vote theory that a lot of people try and publish, because it just doesn't make sense. Because if that were true, Appalachia would have went Democrat.
Well, you also have. It's also worth mentioning back when West Virginia was a Democratic state, and
it was up until the year 2000, and then it took a hard right turn.
The question we have to ask ourselves could West Virginia ever be a Democratic state again? They have the
Joe Manchin.
Yeah, they have like the 4th most Democratic voters in their state
by registration, but most of them vote
red or don't vote at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, those are your conservative Democrats. Those are your Bill Clinton Democrats, first-term Bill Clinton Democrats.
Well, Tennessee didn't support the Union. They were Tennessee was one of the 11 states to secede.
Yeah, true.
Just responding to one of the comments.
But
yeah, so this is probably what I would look at for my map. What the hell? Okay, yeah. So this is kind of what the map that I'm looking at if Perot wasn't involved. But, it's up to interpretation.
Yeah.
And this is just based off of looking at the county by county map that I'm showing now.
That is a lot of counties, to be honest.
And a lot of them are extremely close. And that's what third-party candidates do, is it makes everything close. And it shows just how...
Evan McMuffin.
Yeah, exactly.
Although Trump did pull off a very good victory in that state, even with...
Exactly. 96 was also pretty weird. Last time the Democrats won Arizona.
Well, they didn't win in 1992, did they? Yeah, they did win in that state in 1992. I think the Democrats will pick up in Arizona very soon again, though.
Yep.
And in this election, you see Montana flip, which we were talking about in the last one. Very close, though, within 5.
Oh yeah, it was a very
Um,
close election. However, as we can see, you're starting to see a lot of trends get baked in. For example, the West Coast becoming more and more Democrat, the Northeast becoming more and more Democrat.
South becoming more
Also,
and more conservative.
yeah, but the interesting thing to note here is that the Republicans didn't really support their nominee, Bob Dole.
True, they did it, and
They really didn't support him. I'm talking maybe McCain 2008 levels of not
this
supporting.
this was I know my grandparents are hardcore conservatives, I guess I would call them. But this was the last time that my grandma voted for a Republican, last time she voted for a Democrat.
Huh.
Um,
I remember in '92, my grandfather, God rest his soul, he voted for Perot.
yeah, I mean, it didn't seem like a wasted vote in the beginning of the election.
No, it really didn't.
It
There
looked
was
like he
actually
could
a
have had
point where
been
Perot.
president.
Yeah, I was about to say there's a point where Perot actually led both Clinton and Bush in the polls, and then he dropped out. And part
Yeah,
of that was
didn't he run again in this election too?
yes, he did, and he still got 8 million.
Yeah.
I mean, it was only 8%, but still.
Are we ready to go on to probably the most interesting election that we've done now?
Yeah, 2000.
Headed into the 21st century, 2000. Okay, so the biggest debate here is going to be: was Florida for Bush, or was Florida for Gore?
It was for both. I know I'm cheating with that answer, but
yeah, evict both of their vice presidential nominees and
I have a good idea. Since the country couldn't decide, we should have Bush be president and Al Gore, because he only barely lost Florida, should be vice president.
No, we should have Gore as president and Bush as vice president, since Gore won the popular vote. We had a Green Party in this election, Ralph Nader.
Yes, and a lot of people think that Ralph Nader was the reason that Al Gore lost Florida, but not that many of his voters were actually registered Democrats, and more registered Democrats voted for Bush anyway.
Al Gore was probably thinking, man, I wish Tide Pods were a thing back in the 2011.
Oh, man. Yeah, and here's the thing. I think Gore should take, and here's the funny thing, is Gore actually takes blame for losing this election himself. He shouldn't have let it be close enough to be determined by a third-party candidate, or 500 votes in Florida.
Yeah. Incredibly close. Yeah, I mean, I can't say anything else about that. It was close.
But here's the interesting thing. If you go to an interactive map, flip Tennessee. Al Gore wins his home state. He wins the election.
Yeah, he understands that he's at fault too.
Flip Ohio. He wins the election. Flip 537 electoral votes or not electoral votes. Wow, that would be impressive. Flip 537 votes in Florida. He wins. Flip. I don't remember exactly how close Missouri was, but it was close. Flip Missouri. He wins. Flip Nevada. He wins.
It was, yeah, he would have won just barely if he flipped that.
That said, Oregon was extremely close. Wisconsin was extremely close. Iowa was extremely close. New Mexico was extremely close.
That said, he could have won any state on this map that's red, and he would have won the election.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
pink.
For the 3 electoral votes, right? It would have been a tie, or well, neither candidate would have reached the limit then. And
there's 2 electoral votes missing.
What?
260. I think there's 2. No, 1 electoral vote is missing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, why does DC have 2 votes here?
Because somebody abstained from voting because they didn't like the Florida recount being stopped.
Oh, yeah, figures DC. Typical DC.
Oh,
Yeah,
terrific! It's also on Breitbart.
there.
Of course, Breitbart put up
Yeah,
the
but
map.
if you would have added that vote in
Wait a
DC,
second.
then
Okay, no,
flipped,
that's
added that. If you would have added that third vote in DC and then added any other free state, he would have won the election. Three
but
electoral
yeah.
would have won the election. Anyway, let's go on to 2004. John Kerry versus George W. Bush. The second George W.
And the only Bush to serve 2 terms.
In the first
Casually
convention,
casting shade. Casually casting shade at HW.
the first convention in which featured Barack Obama.
He gave the key. Did he give the keynote speech
Yeah.
at the DNC?
Yeah, and it was a very good keynote speech. Some people say the speech that made him president.
Yeah, that's good enough. And if we look at this, Bush actually won New Mexico.
It was within 5.
It was within 5, but he still won it.
True.
Which part of that's because he got like 40% of the Hispanic vote. Oh, and the reason why Minnesota has 9 electoral votes in this map is because this is the funniest thing ever. So a Minnesota elector accidentally voted. He voted for John Kerry's vice presidential nominee, John Edwards, for president. But it was probably an accident because he also voted John Edwards for vice president on the electoral ballot. It gets even funnier, though. He may have been intoxicated while doing this because he spelled John Edwards, John Ewards, Ewards. This is why people want to get rid of the Electoral College.
What can you say? It's the state of Minnesota. I mean,
yeah, it's too cold to be sober. Wait, that's a joke about Wisconsin, but it's applicable to Minnesota as well.
Go right across the border into Wisconsin. What did they make up? Like beer cheese stew or something? I don't remember what it was.
Beer and cheese soup is actually really good.
Yeah.
It is really good.
Definitely a Wisconsin invention.
I mean, anything in cheese is Wisconsin, though.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
source. I visited my ex's family when I dated someone from Wisconsin, and they love their cheese.
Yeah. Now going on to 2008. Barack Obama, John McCain.
It would have been much closer had certain financial effects not happened.
It would have been much closer if what's the difference between a soccer mom and a pit bull? Lipstick didn't happen.
Sarah Palin. Oh God, you're right.
I call her a I like to call her IQ 0.0. Because I'm pretty sure her IQ level is less than that pit bull she was talking about in that convention speech. So,
also your screen is not exactly sharing too well.
Is it not? Huh.
But that's okay. I'm cycling through the maps anyway.
How's it now? I don't know what's going on with it.
Okay, that shows it. Cool.
Okay.
Except it's doing this whole weird multiple level thing. Sarah Palin is a fun person, but boy, is she blunder prone.
That's what makes her a fun person, okay?
It's fun because I think she even admits she knows she's gaffe prone. I think she understands that. And if we look by county, looking at this map, you see a lot of blue in areas that at one point were extremely red.
Montana was very, very close.
Montana was very close. North Dakota, the Dakotas were close. Kansas and Nebraska got pretty close.
Go back to the county map. I don't know if you X'd out of it or not.
Here we go.
But this area right there, you see along the Mississippi River, those people right there. Okay, I have a special name for those people. Okay, I call those people Mississippi moderates. And people always get it up with the state of Mississippi. I'm like, no, I'm talking about moderate
River
who live along the Mississippi River. Because if you look at the 2016 election or any election, the people along the Mississippi River, they tend to swing a lot from presidential election to presidential election. So it's worth watching what people do.
Except in the state of Mississippi, where I think a lot of the African-American population in Mississippi is along the Mississippi River.
I mean, that's the Black Belt, part of the Black Belt. So, I mean, and if you look at this northern Mississippi moderate area, you see Hillary Clinton didn't win as many Mississippi moderates, and she lost the state of Wisconsin. Iowa. She lost the state of Iowa, barely won the state of Minnesota. That area is important.
Oh yeah.
Very important. And if you don't win it, it's not good. Those people who I guess fundamentally vote with their wallets. I guess that's the beginning of where
it's, to quote a Bill Clinton poster, it's the economy, stupid.
Yeah, that I don't think that's ever left their minds. That passed down from generation to generation. There, if you look at
hypothetical, if the economy didn't crash, can we flip the one vote in Nebraska and let's flip North Carolina? I think that would be a reasonable.
Indiana too, couldn't we?
Yeah, Indiana, North Carolina, that one electoral vote. I think that'd be the most you would ever be able to flip because
Obama was genuinely
popular, charismatic. He did have some cross-party appeal as well.
Not to mention a young, tall, skinny black guy going up against an old white man. I mean,
sure, he's a war hero, but.
The age of the millennials coming of age to vote here. I mean,
just starting, yeah. Oh, you'll also see something really interesting when we go to
2012.
2012 with the new electoral vote counts. Notice that Louisiana actually lost population, but is probably going to gain it back for
2024.
Yeah.
This is, and now I said at the beginning of this video, in other news, Mitt Romney is running for Senate in Utah. And he won Utah, evidently, in his presidential run.
Man, it's good enough.
He'll probably
by a massive amount. I think he won like 80% of the votes in Utah.
Well, that's because he's a Mormon, so probably also explains why he's got 59 grandchildren and stuff. But anyway,
Ohio, Virginia, and Florida were pretty close too.
He closed the gap in Montana. Not only did he flip Indiana, but he brought it within 15 points. Flipped North Carolina.
So here's the interesting thing. A lot of people think that Romney actually just stopped campaigning after like 4 or 5 days out, because there were a lot of polls showing him actually close to winning 4 or 5 days out. Which I think if he had continued, he maybe would have been able to flip. I don't know which state he would have flipped of the ones that were within 5, but I think he probably would have picked off one. Which one do you think he would have had the best chance in?
Ohio. No,
Really? Oh,
Florida. I think he would have had the best chance in Florida.
okay. I can see that. I would actually say Virginia because Virginia hadn't gone as blue, and the three counties weren't as large as they are now,
True, true.
and they still had a propensity to vote slightly red at that point. So I'd say Virginia, but I could see an argument for Florida.
Yeah. Um,
But I mean, I don't really honestly think that he'd be able to do much more. And even then, I think there's a good chance Obama would still pick up all three.
Obama wasn't. Well, he was still a popular president, but he was more popular than Donald Trump. But
Yeah. I mean, there's still a 5 million vote gap,
Yeah, yeah, that
It's 4% margin of victory.
332 to 206 is still a pretty awesome victory too. Something that would be hard for a candidate to do nowadays.
And also, Texas gained a crud load because of the Katrina stuff that pushed people from Louisiana.
Yeah, that too. I wonder if Oklahoma will gain in 2024 because of Harvey. Or what was it, Harvey? No, yeah, it was Harvey. Oklahoma.
That might actually happen considering how close it is to.
Or Louisiana gains electoral votes because Harvey.
Yeah, very possible. They gain some of them back, but Texas is still going to gain.
Yeah, everybody thinks that everybody's like, oh yeah, Oklahoma's not going to do anything. And next thing you know, 10 electoral votes added in Oklahoma. Everybody's like, what? The entire
but here's the thing. You can see the transformation of the Rust Belt even in this, because you would think that even with a popular Democrat president, it would be solid blue, but it's not. It's getting closer.
Yeah. Okay, shall we go on to the 2016 presidential?
The most recent one, which...
And the most annoying one. The most...
Oh my God.
Also one of the most controversial ones that we've had.
The election that...
Also one of the most controversial ones we've had in a while. Mainly because Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by a big margin.
A little bit under 3 million, or about 2% exact.
Well, for a person who lost the electoral vote by a pretty big margin.
But somehow she managed to lose the electoral vote massively. And I think this highlights one of the big a big reason why a lot of people argue in favor of and also argue against the Electoral College.
Yeah, and
part of the reason why they argue in favor of it
if this would have
is because we don't want California and New York deciding what the rest of us get.
Yeah,
but at the same time, a lot of people you get more votes, you should win.
Ranked voting also works too.
Oh, I would love ranked voting. Oh my God.
In this election, you can either flip North Carolina and Florida, and she wins the election, which would have been her easiest path to victory, if you ask me. Or you have to flip all Wisconsin, Michigan, and
Pennsylvania. Which I think yeah, and here's the thing. Clinton racked up massive margins. So the reason why she won the popular vote is she racked up massive margins in New York and Los Angeles and, the Bay Area, as well as Seattle to some extent. And Trump won the swing states by very slim margins.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out the states that were really close in this election, like Georgia was moderately close, Texas was moderately close, Arizona was very close, and then you have Iowa,
which was actually voted for Trump more than Texas did.
Yeah, and
same with Ohio was a little bit less than Texas.
I think
but
more or less because of people who didn't vote rather than the immigrant vote.
Texas was weird because I think Trump really pissed off a lot of Texans for some reason, and I'd like to figure out why.
back
because
to
that represented a much more massive swing than you would have expected.
yeah, and back in the early part of the election when Hillary Clinton was leading by 6 points in Kansas, and everybody was like, "Oh, Hillary's gonna win Kansas," and
No,
yeah.
as we clearly see, he won it by a ton.
I think that Hillary,
I think part of
could have done so much more good for herself that she didn't do, and that she didn't take advantage of. For example,
surrogates.
yeah. For example, she didn't go to Wisconsin at all.
No, yeah, exactly.
And what Hillary Clinton did is, while she made history of being the first woman, the only woman to, I guess, even win a popular
get a major party ticket.
But anyway, the first woman to win the popular vote. While she made history doing that, you have to give credit where credit is.
Of course.
But she also taught a lesson to a lot of Democratic politicians who are going to be preceding her as the nominee, and that is, don't ignore swing states that you think are going to go for you just because the polls say they are. Don't do it.
I think the other lesson she taught was don't take anything for granted.
Yeah. Shit, everybody thought she was going to win the election. That wasn't. I mean, even some of the most hardcore Trump supporters, like even my grandparents, were like, "Yeah, we're going to vote for Trump, but yeah, he's not going to win. Hillary's going to be the next president." And election night, everybody kind of, I mean, even the people who thought Trump was going to win kind of sat there with like a gaped mouth.
Wait,
like,
he really won?
Oh.
You know, I had a feeling he was going to win, but I still didn't quite believe it as I saw it happening.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what? I thought this was going to be, you know, wait, what?
And Donald Trump was the only Republican that was out of those governors and senators and everything that could have beat Hillary Clinton.
No, the way I think it is I think the Republicans nominated the only person who could really lose to Hillary Clinton if they, you know, put a dedicated anti-Clinton attack out. But I also think the Democrats nominated the only person who could possibly lose to Trump. It was like watching the Browns-Lions game.
If Hillary didn't have emails in Benghazi behind her, this might have just been a landslide. This might have
possible, very possible. But then there's the Whitewater and no, I'm sorry. Those are really old scandals, though. So
just put Hillary Clinton from 2008 and 2016, and
maybe I could see that. Put Hillary Clinton from 1964.
You might have flipped Montana. You might have actually flipped Texas, Arizona.
Of course, then again, you'd have to bring back the Donald Trump from the year 2000, where he left the Reform Party because they had David Duke.
Where now he was endorsed by David Duke in 2016.
I mean, he was endorsed by David Duke in 2000, so... and then he dropped out of the race because of that. Unfortunately, when you're the major party ticket and people expect you to stay in no matter what, yeah, you can't really drop out of a race when you get nominated by idiots. Yeah. All you can do is just say, he's an idiot.
I don't understand where people were coming from. They're like, Donald Trump needs to drop out of the race. The media was going crazy about Donald Trump dropping out of the race. I was like, come on. Honestly.
He won his party's nomination.
You think a major party candidate would ever drop out of the race for president?
No. Not unless they did something like really bad, like killed someone in Fifth Avenue.
Yeah. And even then,
in broad daylight.
Even then, I don't think Donald Trump would drop out of the election.
I mean, exactly. Quote Donald Trump, I could shoot someone in broad daylight in Fifth Avenue and not lose votes.
Even then, I think he'd win.
I think that he might actually gain votes if he did that.
He might. And
here's one of my more interesting theories about Trump is that it's actually a cult of personality that's formed around him.
Yeah, I think people approve of him more because of
He's so entertaining, which I'm not sure if that's a good thing.
Yeah, is it entertaining to watch him play with Kim Jong-un like that, or is it dangerous for me? Should I be laughing or should I be building my fallout filter?
I mean, I have to admit, Little Rocket Man is beautiful.
Yeah,
that was a beautiful tweet.
My nuclear button is bigger than yours. We all know what he was talking about.
And mine actually works. Oh, the multiple levels that can go.
Little Marco Rubio.
Little Marco.
Lion's Head. Crooked Hillary. Did he have a nickname for Bernie? Socialist Bernie?
I don't think he actually had one for Bernie.
That's too bad. That probably would have been funny.
I mean, I think he coined Creepy Uncle Joe for Joe Biden. Oh, you have to admit, any photos with him around younger women just look like he's the creepy uncle.
Yeah, but not to mention, I do think that if Joe Biden ever ran against Trump, he would ultimately demolish him.
The one nickname I think he went a little too far on was Pocahontas.
Oh yeah,
for Elizabeth Warren. Mm-hmm. Just because that's an insult to Pocahontas.
Yeah, yeah, that is. Yeah, it is.
But no, actually, part of that is because he was mocking Elizabeth Warren for claiming to have Native American heritage when it's likely she doesn't.
Yeah.
Because of, she claiming, oh, I'm part Cherokee because I have high cheekbones. I mean, come on, seriously?
She needs a 23 test.
That would have been what he should have done is instead of calling her Pocahontas, he should have sent her a 23andMe test. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think we elected an internet troll to the White House.
Yeah, we did. We
elected a meme as president.
The meme master. I mean,
we have to give credit where credit's due. The memes this election cycle were pretty good.
Yeah,
they were really good.
Evan McMuffin. Evan McMuffin. Pretty good. I took that off of one of your videos,
Yes, you did. Because it's funny.
Yep, it is. It is.
So and of course, what did I call Gary? What was Gary Johnson? Oh, what was he? He was a pothead. I mean, he is. Like, no joke. He actually eats marijuana edibles.
Of course he does. He probably hands them out to his crowd when he's giving speeches. Here, have a brownie.
Just like a Rush concert.
Gary, what's in the brownie?
Painkillers.
Yeah.
Except these are safer than the opiates your doctor prescribed. Is it weed? Yes. Oh man, he's a pothead, but he's our pothead.
If it helps anything, Jill Stein prescribed it to me.
Oh man, I gotta also admit, everybody's going. The Bernie supporters who went to Gary Johnson to try and deny both Clinton and Trump a 270 majority. I love what they did with the Feel the Burn campaign. They adopted it to Gary Johnson. Feel the Johnson.
How does that
work? Phrasing?
I mean, if you think about it, Feel the Hill works. Kind of weird, but the hill.
Also, we have to mention that there were.
I don't want to get inappropriate here, but Feel the.
Oh wow! Nice. Nice.
Oh,
No, taste it.
it reminds me. It reminds me of the women's matches.
Oh man. But yeah, we have to mention that there were 7 faithless electors in this election.
Yeah, that too, and one of them voted for like the Native American leader. What was it?
Faith Spotted Eagle.
Yeah,
3 Democrat
No.
3 Democrat electors voted for Colin Powell, a Republican.
They probably didn't know it was a Republican.
They're like African American with government experience, Democrat.
Democrat. Condi Rice, African American woman with with government experience, Democrat. When realistic, both of them are Republican.
That would be a very interesting ticket, is a Colin Powell Condoleezza Rice ticket.
And
what would the GOP do if they put both of them on the ticket?
I think after you put somebody like as radical as Trump, you just can't put somebody as chill as Condoleezza Rice on the top of a ticket.
Actually, that might work. Honestly, that might work is better than you would think.
You need to find a way to neutralize the Republican Party, so you run Condoleezza Rice, she'll only be like 71 in the 2024 presidential election.
Yeah. Nikki Haley is my dark horse for the 2024 nomination.
Oh gosh, I don't. There's no problem with her. I just can't stand her at all. I don't know.
I mean, she did have the best soundbite from the Republican primaries. Somebody asked her opinion on Trump, and she replied with the one thing that will kill any presidential campaign in the South, or at least should. Oh, bless his heart. Which, translated from Southern, means you dumbass.
Oh, boy.
Anyway.
Here was the favorite. Colin Powell won 3, John Kasich, Ron Paul.
Paul. It's happening.
And Faith Spotted Eagle received 1.
And Bernie Sanders as well.
Voting for Faith Spotted Eagle.
Oh, yeah. But here's the funny thing. There were 3 other electors who wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders. 1 from Maine, 1 from Minnesota, and 1 from Colorado.
Yeah. And can they even do that because of laws?
All 3 were pledged for Clinton. I think in Minnesota, they were actually allowed to, but they kicked him out.
Because I know there weren't any,
but
in Illinois that wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders. In fact, all of them were unanimously and outspokenly voting for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Because
in Maine, they declared all 4 votes invalid.
Most
after one guy screwed it up, and they said re-vote, and he said, "Okay, fine."
Yeah, most of the electors in Illinois are from Chicago.
That should make perfect sense then.
Yeah.
Also, we get to see I forgot to mention, we get to see Virginia's continued evolution into a blue state.
Yes. DC went like 102 to 0. I don't think DC will ever go for a Republican.
No, it likely won't.
Let's go and speculate the 2020 presidential election for a second, because I mean, we are still how many days out from the election? Like
990,
or is it 990?
Okay, I'm going to go to a blank map. So we can assume that the Democrats are going to win.
But wait just a second. We are 990 days away from the election, but think about how soon it'll be until people start declaring for the primaries.
I mean, like, John Delaney has.
I know he has, but I mean, like, big candidates. Like,
we can assume Democrats are going to win every state. I'm putting in blue.
What? Oh, boy. I think you might be overdoing it very slightly.
Oh, wait, you couldn't tell that I was being sarcastic.
Obviously, Hillary Clinton's going to run and win all those states. Obviously, because that's just a liberal way of thinking.
And then, of course, the Republicans are going to get the spare leavings.
I don't think the Republicans are going to win Alabama.
Oh, and get this. The Democrat is Kanye West.
Oh. That would be the biggest thing that Democrats have ever done is nominate a Kanye West for
who is reportedly a lot more conservative than people might think.
I think if Kanye West ran, though, he'd run as a Republican because
it actually makes a lot of sense.
And who else was it?
Anyway, I'm going to be a little more serious this time.
I think the biggest chance for the Democrats to win would be a Biden nomination.
Maybe. I can see arguments.
But unless you want Sanders to die in office, you're not going to nominate him. Okay, let's be honest.
Or Carter.
What?
Or Carter.
Yeah, I was telling mom, technically, we can nominate George H.W. Bush and he can be president for another term.
Same thing with Jimmy Carter.
Yeah,
but I think both H.W. and Carter are more focused on humanitarian work and being old.
Yeah, and he's a fighter. He might just make it to serve his entire last term.
The term that Reagan stole from him.
Yeah. He was like, now that Reagan's dead, I'm going to run for president.
So yeah, these are my I'm going to call them my toss-up. These are states I expect to be within about 5-ish%. 5 or 10%.
Why do I feel like Jimmy Carter was one of those candidates who would like lean over to Ronald Reagan in a debate and be like, hey, if you beat me in this election, I'm going to outlive you.
By the way, did you see the mic drop that Chloe Kim gave to the other snowboarders in the women's half pipe at the Olympics?
I did, and I haven't been watching the Olympics.
Yeah, no, it was pretty awesome. They get 3 runs in the finals. She goes out and posts up the highest, one of the higher scores you can get on her first run, and everybody's like, well, I lost.
I think when we come to the 2018 Senate elections, I think we're going to be surprised that night. I don't know if it'll be in favor of the Democrats or the Republicans, but I think that night's going to be a big surprise. I just have that feeling. If that makes any sense, you just have that feeling like something's. For example, a Phil Bredesen victory in Tennessee would surprise me.
It really would, yeah. Especially if Corker decides to run.
I don't think that would surprise me as much as a Beto. I don't think that would surprise me as much as a Beto O'Rourke. A Beto O'Rourke victory in Texas.
So that's kind of what. And no, that's generous. Let's give Democrats Virginia.
What would you do if election night every state on the map just turned to the Democrats? Just every state.
I'd be a little surprised.
Oh look! They already updated it. Mitt Romney 2012. It's gonna be Mitt Romney versus Jenny Wilson. They're like, oh okay. Yep, Mitt Romney wins.
That's that. But yeah, I think this is what I think generic electoral map will look like. But I could be wrong on Wisconsin and Florida.
If Trump keeps up what he's doing now and not shoot himself in the foot between now and election, I think he might
that's
a win.
The only reason why I have him as a favorite is because he's the incumbent, and I will always err on the side of the incumbent if it's close.
I will never err on the side of an unpopular incumbent. I've learned not to do that, especially in Illinois politics. Bruce Rauner.
Blagojevich!
Also, Bruce Rauner.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't understand why everybody's rating that race as a toss-up, because that is not a toss-up.
No, it's not. Dang, his approval rating is going up significantly.
Trump or Blagojevich?
No.
Wow. Oh, wow. I think I need to get some rest.
This is Blagojevich's approval rating here, guys. 41.4%.
Yeah, honestly, switch it to likely voters.
Honestly, Blagojevich probably still has a higher approval rating than Bruce Rauner does. Just kidding. It'd be like 2% if that.
And when we go to likely and registered voters, it actually goes up to 43%. Which makes sense if you look at the actual poll numbers and then you just kind of adjust for the House effect.
He's still pretty much lower than any other president at this time.
But not significantly.
He is significantly lower than some presidents.
I mean, let's put it...
Than an Eisenhower. He's significantly lower.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that's Eisenhower.
Or a Kennedy, or a Johnson, or a Nixon.
Again, that's Kennedy, Johnson. Wow, yeah.
Or a H.W. Bush.
Well, H.W. Bush was always popular.
He's way lower than a W. Bush.
Well,
he's not.
We have to remember what happened with W. Bush. What happened on this day that caused his ratings to spike?
On this day?
The one that I've got highlighted.
Oh, I wasn't looking at your thing.
Yeah, 73.9%, and then before he was at 51. What do you think happened?
I'm gonna take a wild guess here and say that might have been 9/11.
I was gonna say it's Rudy Giuliani's favorite word.
7/11.
Yeah, and by the way, by the end of his first term, Bush was already back underwater.
God, I hate Rudy Giuliani. Can't stand him.
The answer to everything: 9/11. 9/11 was bad.
And then his approval rating dropped terribly the rest of his term. By the time he left office, he was at a 27.8% approval rating.
Yeah, that's really bad. That's embarrassing.
That's lower than any other president.
H.W. Bush went way down the tubes when he was about to get, when he got booted out of office. And then he went right back up because they realized, oh, he's peacefully transitioning. Nixon, oh my God, his ratings went down the tubes.
Who?
Nixon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, that's lower.
Lyndon Baines Johnson went way down, and then he went up as he handed it over. Eisenhower actually went, wow.
I feel like every president drops before they realize that, oh, wait, he's transitioning peacefully. Reagan was at one point below the 50% margin.
And his lowest was...
Everybody's like, oh, Reagan was like one of the best presidents, whereas... I mean,
he was never super popular during his... well, there were points where he was extremely popular, but he was never, you know, as popular as, say, he was somebody who was popular throughout their entire term.
Clinton was pretty popular by his third year.
Yeah, but he was still holding water.
Yeah, Clinton held the highest since Carter. No, yeah.
U.S. Grant.
Carter. Oh wait, no. Ronald Reagan.
Ulysses
Hold on.
S. Grant was really popular throughout his presidency, even though he was a really bad president.
Who is winning the race for Congress? Let's look at that. Democrats, 46 points.
Democrats, but it's very narrow. A lot of people are speculating that for Democrats to gain seats, they have to win by 7 points or more.
They have to win what?
They have to, in order to gain House seats, they have to win the overall vote by 7 points or more.
Yeah, not gonna happen.
A lot of Democrats are thinking that in order to get a majority, they have to win the nation by 12 points in the congressional ballot.
I'm just
that should tell you how heavily gerrymandered this nation is. And it's not just gerrymandering, because we have to realize that people have self-gerrymandered. Essentially, you know, Democrats went to the big cities, Republicans stayed in rural areas and said, I'm fine.
And there's a lot more rural areas in the United States.
Exactly, yeah. So, anyway, I'm going to have to call it an evening.
Yeah, I think we've went through enough here.
Well,
I guess thanks everybody for watching. And yep. Well, guess we'll call that a wrap.
Peace.